This is live from my office. I got to admit something. I am worn out. We are recording this on Monday, May 24th. And the day before, I was physically taxed watching Phil Mickelson, age 50, become the oldest player ever to win a major in professional golf when he won the PGA Championship on the Ocean Course at Kiowa in South Carolina. And it was up, it was down. He was up and down. He pulled a Phil Mickelson here and there where he looked like he was going to give it away, but then in the end he pulled it off. It was very cool. Very cool. Now, I know what you're saying. You're pulling for a guy that's worth probably $250 million, and now after winning at 50 and the extra endorsements and things that'll come along, maybe he's worth $275 million. Look, it's not about that. It's about the fact that he's 50, I'm 60, and I want old people to win. I don't care what you're involved in. If you're old, I'm pulling for you. Whatever you're doing, you geezer. As a matter of fact, let me know what you're doing. You can email me at thecochranshow@gmail.com and say, Steve, I'm old. Here's what I'm doing. I'll root for you. I'll plug whatever you do, and I'll talk about it. Because I'm for old people. maybe the weirdest slogan I've ever come up with in the course of a long career. At any rate, congratulations, Phil. Moving on here, let's talk about the fundamentals of what we do on Live from My Office. We want you to subscribe, rate, and review, and continue to pump up the numbers, because our numbers have never been higher. Our listenership has never been stronger. Subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen. I'm talking about Apple and Spotify, CochranShow.com. We've got them all there, of course. But everywhere there's a podcast, Live from My Office is there with you, and I appreciate the support. David Hochberg and Team Hochberg sponsor Live from My Office. Thank you for that. More on that in a moment. Today, it's politics. The guest, Pat Brady. My buddy Pat Brady, from all those years on the radio, former head of the Republican Party in Illinois, and Jim Durkin, the head of the Republicans in the House Republican leader. What's his world like now that Mike Madigan is gone? What's he think of the governor? How are we going to not be broke? How are we going to keep people from leaving the state? He's got a lot of things to say. I think you're going to find it entertaining. And if you're a Republican who feels like you're lost because you feel like the party left you, well, both of these guys are probably right where you are, and that is Trump is not the Republican Party. And the Republican Party deserves to be saved. Conservative fundamental values are important, and that's what Durkin believes. That's what Pat Brady believes. Anyway, we'll get into all of that coming up on something I like to call What's Wrong with the Right and the Left. On the left side of things, an unfair map of legislative districts has been drawn again. The way this works in Illinois is every 10 years, a new map is drawn by the party in power. This is how Madigan stayed in power for all those years. The map first draft, if you will, was out this weekend. We'll talk about that. On the Republican side, the wrong is much more obvious, whether it's voter suppression, the big lie that continues to be perpetrated, and the Trump thing. The fact that this is the Trump party. Let me tell you something. Trump has never been less hot. Nobody cares. Less people care every day. And the people he screwed, from Rudy Giuliani to those that bought into his nonsense, that were part of the January 6th Trump riots, well, they're all going away. And the worst thing that Congress could do is exactly what Congress is doing. And that's bending over to Donald Trump in the general direction of Mar-a-Lago and saying, thank you, may I have another. That's why you've got to vote. You've got to vote. And the primaries are vitally important. We'll tackle that as well. Now, as bad as the Republican Party on a national level has been, are they good? Are they improving? Are they growing here in Illinois? Well, there's an argument to be made that there's some truth in that. Where am I in this? I'm the 60. If you listen with regularity, you know that. What's my mantra? I'll wait. The far right and the far left are not the solution. They're the problem. 20% on the left, 20% on the right. Neither one thinks the other side has anything of value to contribute. The 60 is where the rest of us live. We want a government that works and a government that works for us. All of that will be tackled with Pat Brady and with a Republican House leader, Jim Durkin, when we come back. Yeah, a lot of it is Illinois. A lot of it is the city of Chicago, but we have the national stuff too. And regardless of wherever you listen, I think you're going to enjoy a discussion of politics. What's wrong with the right and the left? Turns out quite a bit. When we come back on Live from My Office. If you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance the one you're in, you need to do what I did. When I needed help with financing my house, a home equity loan, a refi, I called Team Hochberg, your trusted local leader. David built his business helping first responders with medical professionals as well, and he helped them do their mortgages and wanted to do more than just say thank you. Every week, Team Hochberg recognizes first responders and medical pros for keeping us safe and keeping up the good work they do every day. And this week, Team Hochberg recognizes Sheriff Dwight Baird and Undersheriff Bobby Richardson, as well as the 123 officers and 14 civilian workers in the Kendall County Sheriff's Department. Team Hochberg purchased food from Newark Country Kitchen, owned by Tony Leashy. First responders and medical professionals, they deserve our appreciation always. Family restaurants need our support. Here's how you can help. If you can afford to purchase lunch from a family-owned restaurant for your local police and fire departments and hospitals, trust me, they'll appreciate it. Team Hochberg helped me and thousands of first responders, my family too, my daughter, my sister. The list goes on and on. And what you need to know is these thousands of first responders, medical pros, and others, when David Hochberg helped them with the financial burdens of the biggest purchase of their life, their house, well, it gave them more time to do what they do best, and that's take care of the rest of us. But they can't help you if you don't call. It's 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com for a Homeside Financial, an equal housing lender, NMLS number 1124061. This is Live from My Office, and let's talk about several things of importance in the greater Chicago area, but also nationally as well. And as Illinois goes, I still believe so goes the country. Let me introduce to you the leader of the House in Illinois, and one of my favorite people involved in politics, though for years I've tried to tell him to get out and get a real job, Jim Durkin. Jim, how are you?
Great, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for doing this.
My pleasure.
And that's my old friend, Pat Brady, the former head of the Republican Party in Illinois, who has never been afraid to stand up for what he believes is right. I grudgingly admit I respect him. And Pat, how are you?
Right where we want him, Steve. Got him right where we want him.
Gentlemen, I want to talk about the map first. It was 2014 when my former boss, Dennis Fitzsimons, who ran Tribune, was part of a group that was trying to get fair maps done in Illinois. That was thrown out by the courts. Now, Governor Pritzker has said, I'm not going to sign it if it's a gerrymandered map. Well, the map is out. Leader Durkin, what does it look like?
Wow, it's gerrymandered. We saw the first version of it Friday night. There wasn't any specificity to it. There were no lines that were included in the map. It looked like a coloring book that a 10-year-old would do. No data to show how they came to those conclusions. And so we're kind of left in the lurch on what this map is going to look like. History has a way of repeating itself, and the current speaker is no different than his predecessor, Mike Madigan. So we believe that this is a first shot over the bow to show maps that have Republicans all wrapped into one or two districts. We have at least 20 of my current members have been put in with other current Republicans, other Republican members of the caucus under what their interpretation of the map is, but there's no House Democrats who have that same issue. So this is a very partisan map. It's we're not really up against a deadline. The only true deadline is October 5th, but the Democrats will say that they have to pass something by the end of June to fulfill their constitutional requirements. That is unadulterated BS. So we have a process in place. And when we go back down to Springfield, we're going to talk about exactly how they came to these conclusions, because there's an important aspect in this, Steve. They're not using the United States Census Bureau numbers. That has been delayed because of COVID. So they're using untested data to come to these conclusions. And our courts have already, throughout the United States, have said you can't do this. So we have a little bit to go on this.
And Pat, back it up just a bit and explain, A, why all this is so important to people and why they should care. And secondarily, what it means as far as your take on Springfield goes going forward.
I think, and Jim could probably speak to this as well. I mean, all this map process and the way that Jim has laid it out, of how messed up it is and how partisan it is and how unfair it truly is and doesn't serve the intended purposes. The governor is on record all the way through his campaign saying that I will not sign an unfair map, time and time again. In fact, there was an article last week where he signed it in one of his, like a pledge in one of his Ed Board interviews. So the political problem is, I think, in addition to what Jim has, and we'll talk about drawing these partisan districts, is the governor's really in a trick bag. Is he going to sign off on this and say, yeah, this is in spite of what I said about wanting a fair map, which 8 in 10 in this state want. They want this map process change to be fair. Is he going to sign this? And if he does, if will be a political price to pay, in 18 months.
And as far as the importance of it goes, this determines who you're going to vote for. Most people are much more familiar with the term redistricting than they are gerrymandering. But this, I assume, Leader Durkin, has some negotiation involved going forward before any of this is finalized, or is it just going to end up in court?
Well, the only negotiations that's going on is between the Senate Democrats and the House Democrats. For some reason,
I think I know how that's going to end.
Yeah. This is how they contain the power. This is how they maintain power, like Mike Madigan did for so many years. But it is this ultimate power and control. It's what's playing out over at the federal building right now with respect to the ComEd and red light scandals. This is what happens when you give party plenary control over state government, arrogance and greed. And that is exactly what's happening. But I think Pat makes a very good point. We have a situation where we have maps that are being drawn by politicians. The governor, the Speaker of the House, and 31 House Democrats in the past have signed on and supported an independent map process. The Speaker of the House, as of 4 years ago, stated that we have to have an independent commission instead of politicians writing maps, because that's the only way to protect minority interests. He's abandoned that. And the governor, as Pat said, has said unequivocally that I will not sign a map that is drawn by politicians, but he is backtracking right now. And that's really unfortunate for the chief executive of the state of Illinois to campaign on an issue, as Pat said, that 8 in 10 people want. And also, when there was the independent petition, the state petition that was sought to be accomplished to change the Constitution, there were over 600,000 Illinoisans who signed on to that. And as you said, Dennis Fitzsimon, they were part of that group. So this is a tragic lie that is being perpetrated upon the public by the Democrats in order to maintain absolute power and control over the legislative process. And Steve, it's just not the House and the Senate. It is also the congressional districts where what the legislature draws as well.
Pat, there's an odd momentum thing that goes on where I feel like Illinois Republicans are in much better shape than the Republican Party is nationally. And by the way, Leader Durkin, I give you credit for that. But trends have shown that Republicans are headed in the right direction in the state. In the wake of Trump leaving, it appears to be what amounts to a positive. You got the Kinzinger factor in there and all of that. But before we leave this map issue, and the census, as Leader Durkin mentioned as well, which means Illinois is going to lose a House seat federally, what do the Republican numbers look like, as much as you've been able to analyze them in the short period of time since the map came out? Because we're doing this, by the way, on Sunday, the 23rd, and it was late the 21st when you guys got the first look at this.
Yeah, well, I mean, and Jim knows better than anybody. The map they drew 10 years ago was through the same process. So it's a highly, I think the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals described it as a blatantly political map. It still met the constitutional parameters. But let's just take, I guess, history is usually the best lesson of what might happen going forward. In the last election cycle, Steve, you and I talked about it all the time, there was going to be a wave. We're going to be a big blue wave. And particularly in Illinois, where Speaker Madigan raised $40 million, and the Republicans only had $4 million. And Jim Durkin was going to lose 12 seats and blah, blah, blah. Well, it didn't quite work that way. The voters, when they came around to voting, it ended up being a net gain for House Republicans, which was a huge win in this state. It really, I think, a huge blowback at what has been, and you have all these discussions about the partisan map or the partisan approach to politics over the last 10 or 15 years by the Democrats. I go, I guess that'd be okay if it's worked for everybody, but look at the state and look at the work condition we're in. And I think people in the suburbs said, hey, enough's enough, particularly on the issues of public safety and taxes, and said, hey, maybe the Republicans led by Jim Durkin in the House have a better way forward. And I think that's what you saw. So if you just take that momentum into the next election, I think, Jim, there were 25 legislative districts held by Democrats where the voters supported or voted against the Pritzker signature issue on the fair tax. So
yes, that's correct. And this is important. And this is why the Democrats are making this as partisan and want to keep as minimum Republicans elected. The fair tax was rejected by 57% of the Illinoisans, and that means Republicans, Democrats, and Independents rejected the governor's signature issue. 24 of the current House Democrat seats, we looked at the numbers in each one of those seats, of 24 seats, and the fair tax lost there. And in those 24, a good portion of those 24 voted for the defund police reform bill back in January, which is going to have a ripple effect throughout the state of Illinois on public safety. But remember also, we have the sitting Chief Justice of the Illinois Supreme Court was not retained. And Steve, not retaining a judge in Illinois, let alone a Supreme Court justice, just doesn't occur. So there has been an awakening in Illinois on Illinois spending and the Democrat Party of Illinois. Scandal, spending beyond their means, not addressing the important issues of the day. We're not going to see any type of reform with our pension systems, and we're looking at a $10 billion investment that's coming out of our budget. Nobody seems to say, there's no sense of urgency with the governor and the Democrats. There will be no property tax reform. And if there's any ethics reform, which should have been done a year ago, I don't know who else it needs to be indicted for us to be able to say that we can police ourselves and change the operations in Springfield. So Steve, this is why the Democrats are doing this. They are very fearful of the midterm election. And that's why they plan to draw a map that is going to be as pro-Democrat, anti-Republican, no matter how they try to say that this is a fair process. It isn't. And, let me just say that this is interesting. The chairman of the redistricting committee in the House is from Cicero, Illinois. You familiar with that?
Yep. Heard of it.
Mr. Hernandez. The House proposed maps reflects input from grassroots individuals and community organizations across Illinois. After the map was put out, 50 organizations who never side and work with Republicans or never with us on any issue sent out a very, very strong but negative statement against the Democrats with this map, saying that this has to be appealed, this has to be challenged in court, this is an abomination, this is exactly the worst thing that Illinois government can do. So they are trying to spin this in a way which it's going to be seen as a grand gathering of all interests in Illinois to come together on this process. It's a lie.
It's a lie because they're being used as front organizations to make it seem fair?
No, they are siding with us.
So that part's legitimate. The lie is that the lie is that Pritzker's organization and party will work with them and work with the larger good.
I was at the hearings and I've participated in many of them, and all of the advocacy groups, whether it's from Change Illinois, the League of Women Voters, some 40 of them said that the legislature should not be in the business of drawing legislative maps, as we have all said, and I've tried for the last 5 years have said that. And also, the data that the Democrats are using is not sound. It is unreliable. It's based on 200,000 Illinoisans in a 13 million population state. That's going to be the foundation for the maps, and that's just not right. But again, this is about rushing through and not giving Republicans a seat at the table.
You've seen a million of these issues, and Pat, you have as well, where Republicans have been fighting upstream in Illinois for a very long time. What's your level of confidence that you're going to be able to create a more fair map based out of the fact that the Democrats tried to get this done? Because it seems to me they made their case worse by going so far in the direction they've apparently gone.
Well, honestly, Steve, Jim I can give you my opinion, but I think Jim's probably got a better perspective on that. There are certain things I don't know everything about, believe it or not.
Oh, I'm familiar with that. That's a long list. We don't have time. That's like a 7-part podcast, the things you don't know much about.
I think Leader Durkin probably gave you a better answer.
Well, what is your opinion before he does?
I think here's what's going to happen. They do this, and it's very difficult to get these maps overturned, but it's just another example of the majority ruling party here not listening to the 80% of the people in the state that want to have an independent map process. And now actually for the first time, I understand it. I remember 10, 12 years ago when I talk on this issue, people's eyes would glaze over, but people now, voters, understand what it is. So the process this time, it may not be changed, but they certainly have awoken to what it's all about. But I think there's another thing along the prospects going forward. The Democratic system, the way the Democrats have ruled this state in the last 40 years is going to be on trial in about 6 months, whether or not they indict Madigan or not. The system of how things get done in Springfield will be on trial in this Commonwealth Edison trial. And I think that's going to be a heavy burden for Democrats to overcome, no matter how they draw the map.
And it's crashing up against their reelection. But momentum and optimism as far as making it a fair map, what do you think, Jim?
Steve, there's one way of making this independent, and that is for the legislature to wait until the census information comes out at the end of the summer. If we do not have a partisan map signed into law by the end of June, what it means is that the matter goes to an independent, constitutionally created commission for Democrats, for Republicans, to see if they can hash that out. That would be the independent commission that the Democrats, everyone from the governor to every rank and file member of the legislature, has proclaimed is the right process to do. But waiting for the actual census data, which will reflect the demographics and the population shifts in the state of Illinois, is what we should be using as the foundation for the maps. Now, the Democrats, as I said earlier, are using a branch of the U.S. Census Bureau called the American Community Survey, which does a 200,000 annual survey of Illinois citizens to determine demographics and income changes in different areas in a variety of issues. But the U.S. Census Bureau has been very clear over the years that the American Community Survey is not appropriate to count people. So when the governor spent millions of dollars over the last 2 years making sure that the census workers were out, making sure that we're counting people, and he said, make sure everyone counts. That's the whole point of it, to ensure that they have fair representation, not only in the Illinois legislature, but also in Congress. So the governor and every Democrat is going back on their words, something that they've all campaigned on and promised to Illinoisans. So this is a question of whether the Democrats are going to seek, as they always do, which is a page out of the Madigan playbook, ultimate power and control to decide the boundaries, to protect them for 10 years, or we can give it to the independent commission when the U.S. Census numbers come out. Steve, this issue of the American Community Survey, this branch of the U.S. Census Bureau, issue of using that information has been tested in different federal courts in the East Coast and the West Coast. And the courts have said universally that this is not proper to use for any type of map making at the local level nor the state level. It hasn't been tested in Illinois, but I'm prepared to do that. But I will say, Steve, I look at what's happened. There is momentum on our side. Last November was an indictment on Governor Pritzker. People know him. They understand him. He can spend a lot of money over the next year and a half. But right there alone, that vote was a shot across the bow by taxpayers in Illinois saying that we're on to you. We reject what you've done to the state. You, Mike Madigan, and every other Democrat who plays follow the leader in Springfield.
How has this been for you with Madigan being gone? I mean, it was a very quick Madigan's gone in our world. You may have seen it coming, ahead of time. He's got a world of hurt coming up and legal problems and bills, and he's earned every one of them. But to me, and again, this is my words, not yours. Is this some bad movie where the mob guy is managing from beyond? The skipper at a baseball game gets kicks out, but he goes back in the locker room and he's calling the kid that's filling in for him. Who's running the Democrat Party in your world?
Oh, the Democrat Party of Illinois is still being run at 65th and Pulaski. That's Mike Madigan's office. The current speaker, I had high hopes for him based on the statements he had made earlier in the year about this is a new day, a new process. It's just been anything like that. Republicans have been shut out of virtually everything in the House of Representatives. It has almost been a 10-to-1 difference between the number of bills that have been called Democrat to Republicans. He's operating under the same angry Mike Madigan, which he comes and goes. That angry Mike Madigan sometimes would be there, a lot of times it wasn't. But this is purely right out of the playbook. And also, this legislative map is coming completely from Mike Madigan's wheelhouse. I see no other way about it. And I do know that there's collaboration between the current speaker and Mike Madigan. So, and let's be perfectly honest. The new speaker was the hand-picked selector of Mike Madigan. So do you think things are going to change? I don't think so.
Yeah, it would be naive to say so. But Pat, I am fascinated by the fact that there's Republican momentum in a blue state like Illinois, because outside of maybe Larry Hogan and Maryland, there's not a lot of that going on around the country where Republicans have gained a lot of traction in blue states. Why is Illinois different, Pat?
Well, I think it goes back to the fundamental understanding of Illinois, which Jim and I have both been in 102 counties over the last 25 years on his campaign and others. And
great.
Yeah. And people want to say, oh, this is a deep blue state. I don't think it is. I think it's more towards the center. I think many of the Chicago Democrats are further right politically than the way the direction of the National Party has gone. So the premise of the question that this is a deep blue state, not too many years ago, we controlled everything in the 90s, and that slowly eroded away. But I think there are opportunities if we can articulate a good message like Leader Durkin has done on public safety, on taxes, on corruption, and on issues like this map where people are fed up with the way the state's been run. They want to get to a party that can actually provide solutions to the problems and the state get turned around. And I think that's right in the Republican sweet spot, fiscal conservative governance, particularly law and order. These are big issues right now. And I think that's right where the Republicans are. That's why I think you're seeing this shift.
So Leader Durkin, Pritzker has a lot of money, and he spent a lot of money to get the job the first time. I assume he's going to be willing to spend at least that much to keep the job. Who can the Republicans run against him?
And I don't think anybody that we have, I think there's a lot of names right now, interesting individuals from different parts of the state, but I think it's still early. Steve, I don't have a horse in this race yet. Mm-hmm. I'm focused, I'm not just saying this to avoid the question, but I am laser focused on starting our candidate recruitment, raising money, and putting ourselves in a position to be competitive in a year and a half. It was a $30 million spend between Mike Madigan and me last November, and we came out ahead. So the governor has a lot of money, of course, but the fact is, look back and see how the voters throughout the state of Illinois reacted to Governor Pritzker's constitutional amendment on fair tax. That there should be an indication of how the public is no longer just going along with the program. They're seeing through this charade. And that's what we're doing, explaining reality as opposed to the nonsense that the Democrats have perpetrated of how much they have improved the state of Illinois. They can't even keep their lies straight, Steve. It's just really, they're not very good at it.
So are there Democrats, because I feel like you're a guy that has tried to work across the aisle with regularity and tried to be fair through the years and continues to do that. Who on their side is willing to work? Or is it just all one voice?
It's one voice. And it's sad to say that the Democrat House has gone even further to the left. They are still beholden to their leadership. They talk a good game about we're going to stand up to the Democrat leaders, but when it comes to game time, they don't perform, they don't execute. So that's why it is my responsibility to remove as many Democrats from the House of Representatives this next election cycle, because if there's ever a time and place where we need checks and balances in state government, it's right now. And that is my job, and I'm prepared to take it as far as I can. And I like what we have coming up in this midterm.
But it's going to involve people getting out and voting. And Pat, that's my sermon forever. Sure, you're annoyed by the primaries. Too bad. You got to vote in the primaries. You got to vote in the general, because the people in D.C. specifically, but certainly Illinois is not immune to this either. Too many of them count on the fact you're not showing up, and the far right and the far left show up and you don't. So everybody's got to be involved. Pat, what House seat does Illinois lose? Do you have any sense of what that's going to be, where it's going to be?
Probably a downstate one. I mean, it's going to be a Republican, whatever it is. But, Sherry Bustos announced she's not running, that's the Democrat in the western part of the state. But one of the downstate Republican, stronghold Republican seats, I think. So we go from 18 to 17. So I would get, I don't know if Jim agrees, but I would think that's where it comes from. But that being said, the Democrats going to have their own problems on this map, because there are other interest groups within the Democratic caucus that maybe want another seat that are going to fight over. But it's not going to be as easy as it was last time, I don't think, for them.
And Leader Durkin, we've talked about this before, but when Governor Rauner was in office, I felt like you guys had a working relationship. You could certainly
we did
publicly and privately to each other and about each other. But I felt like you made efforts to get things done. What's your relationship with this governor?
Well, the governor, I gave him the benefit of the doubt his first session, and I worked in a bipartisan manner to reach a balanced budget, but also to put together a long overdue capital program, which was not an easy thing to do. And it was okay until the governor, a year and a half ago, the first pandemic budget, we warned the governor. He asked for a spending plan of $42 billion. And we had determined that we only had $38 billion to spend. We warned him that you need to scale back. He doubled down and said that he was going to backfill it with a federal bailout, but also money that's going to come from the fair tax. I mean, that's extremely irresponsible. The governor lost. We're operating under deficits right now. He's not used to losing, not being told no. So the relationship is gone from one that was professional and at arm's length, and there really is not much of a relationship right now. He's not willing to work with us because we're telling them no and calling them out on commitments that he has made and also other Democrats have made during the course of their private life running for public office, but also while serving in the governor's mansion. That's our job, is to keep them honest. And they don't like being told that. And I'm going to continue to do that. It's important that Illinois citizens are educated about commitments that have been made. There's something they always say, promises made, promises kept. It's just the opposite. Promises made, promises not kept. Right. The governor and the Democrats.
Pat, what about the money piece of this? Because the pandemic broke everyone's back. You'll find top flight economists who say you don't have to worry about inflation. We're going to be fine. You don't have to worry about deficit spending. We're going to be fine. It's a bigger federal story, but Illinois is certainly BROKE as well. So what is your feel for that going forward?
Well, they're going to, at some point, have to push a tax increase, the Democrats, which was overwhelmingly rejected, even under the moniker of a fair tax in the last election cycle. So they're really in a trick bag on this. And like Jim said, they promised the Constitution of the state requires that the budget be balanced. And we're $3 or $4 billion short on that. And they can either borrow from the feds, wait for a bailout, or put a tax increase through. They won't talk about tax increase. They did months ago, but I mean, that's the only direction it's going to go. And the Republicans did put some hard votes on the Capitol bill 2 years ago and did some other things to kind of try to meet people in the middle, get stuff done. But I think they're in kind of a bad spot. And the governor losing his signature issue, to me, is the biggest momentum shifter for the Republicans in decades, because that shows that there's a lack of appetite for tax increases and people are fed up.
Well, we got to have people stop leaving the state, right? We got to give people a reason to stay, not a reason to go. And all of us know people that have packed up who love Illinois, but say, I can't afford to do it. I'm not going to do it anymore. How do we change that momentum, Jim Durkin?
It's real simple. I got to win 15 seats. That is and I gave kind of a pathway.
Really what you said was it's real simple. I have to win 15 seats. I think those are contradictory statements, right? It's not simple to get those. 15.
Well, it's not simple to get there, but that's how we change it. That's the simple answer. I got to win 15 seats. And there are places that need to be competitive. But as I mentioned earlier, Democrats have swung way far to the left further left than their districts understand. It's some areas in the city of Chicago, clearly in the suburbs and also in the Collar counties, and a few spots downstate, where the Democrats have blindly supported bad bills that Mike Madigan and also current Speaker Welch have done. All I can say is that we have put together a very good program. We've revamped our campaign process, spending a lot of time outside of the legislative process to speak with business owners, small business owners, to talk about the future and to say that there is a pathway to change the House of Representatives. But also, we have a very vulnerable governor. He is underwater because of what we've seen, not only from the fair tax, but also the corruption that has become synonymous with the Democrat Party of Illinois, which we will see more of in the upcoming days and weeks.
I want to get to your opinion of the big picture of the party, but also, since we're talking about Chicago, we need a healthy Chicago. It's not healthy. I feel for Mayor Lightfoot walking into the position she walked into. Nobody planned on a pandemic. Nobody planned on the murder of George Floyd. There are positive changes that can come out of both of this, but the money wasn't there to begin with, and the city's broke, and the city needs to recover as well. What is the state's role in helping the city of Chicago that maybe the public doesn't know about? And that's for either one of you.
Well, let me just say this, and I echo what you said about Mayor Lightfoot. I like her, but I also like the city of Chicago just as much. I live in the suburbs. Despite what some people say, the city of Chicago is the economic engine of the Midwest and
right.
Also the state of Illinois. And the governor, I would say the mayor, I work with, I talk to her periodically. And she has been drinking out of a fire hose since day one. It's a Chicago Teachers Union strike. It's a pandemic, more threats of strikes. It has not been an easy job. I don't think she's even had a moment to breathe. But a lot of her requests are coming from not only Washington, but also there'll be some support in Chicago. She's running up against a conflict with her school board at CPS. So I'm trying to help navigate and help her to get to a more responsible way for the governance within Chicago public schools, because the CTU wants her out. They want to be able to run, have a elected school board, because that's what they do well. They are better at politics than anything, about putting people on the street. So the mayor's, I can't speak, and we're not going to be able to bail out the city of Chicago. They need to reopen. They need to bring people back into the loop. People need to spend money. They need to be able to use the parking garages, and eventually that will help. Chicago will get a lion's share of bailout money, but everyone, not only businesses, but households, are in for a long recovery. So I want Chicago to succeed, and I have worked with the mayor, and I will continue to work with the mayor, but the governor's got to open up the state of Illinois immediately.
And Pat, you're a resident of the city of Chicago, and you've lived here your whole life. What is your sense of how things are going now that you live in the city?
I think it's a lot better, but I'll tell you right now, one thing we need to do as Republicans or even Democrats, we need to get rid of the state's attorney here in Cook County, who has decided that she is
100%
not a law enforcement officer. She is someone that's a public welfare officer. And she is absolutely the worst. I've been here in and out of here the last 40 years, the worst thing I've ever seen. You can steal up to $1,000 worth of TVs and you won't get prosecuted. Let them out of jail. Don't prosecute people. Everybody's a victim. This thing she did a couple of weeks ago where she didn't take responsibility for watching the video on probably one of the biggest police shootings in the country at the time. She needs to go, because you cannot have a city that thrives when people are scared to walk down the block and the person who's supposed to be prosecuting the bad guys doesn't do her job. We need somebody new in that job. That's cannot come too soon.
Well, yeah, and the fact that the rioters, not the protesters, the rioters after George Floyd have gotten away with what they've gotten away with is outrageous. And she doesn't seem to, it doesn't seem to
what
bother her
everybody's
at all.
Gotten away with, and her attitude towards, listen, Jim and I were both prosecutors, and you do, there's an administration of justice element to it. You're not really taking one side, you're representing justice. But part of that justice component is representing victims. And there are people that are being shot every day, hundreds. I mean, we're going to have more murders this year than we've had since I moved here in 1987. And what does she do? That you never hear about a gang strategy or a murder strategy or anything. All you hear about is, oh, we're not going to prosecute people for doing certain things, or we're going to turn this into some kind of some kind of welfare organization. She's just a train wreck. And that is not, people aren't going to bring their businesses here if they think that their employees are in danger of being shot walking down Michigan Avenue.
Well, and I would also put this back on Governor Pritzker as well. We know there's no question about the fact that the majority of illegal guns are coming into Illinois from Indiana, and why we haven't had a public a conclave, a seminar, a get-together with the governor of Indiana, who I know doesn't want to do it, and Pritzker to get together and say, we're going to fix this problem together. I haven't even seen the effort. Well, if I'm Pritzker, I'd be on the phone with the governor of Indiana immediately going, we're going to do this together, or I'm going to come out publicly and I'm going to explain to people why your state's the problem.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I agree that that's all the problem, but the criticism accepted, but it doesn't matter if you don't have a prosecutor that doesn't prosecute cases anyway. The criminals are going to be here because they know they can get away with it.
Well, Steve, it's important to know that most of these gang crimes and these violent crimes are now being picked up by the U.S. Attorney's Office, and they're overwhelmed with the types of cases that Pat and I used to try at 26 in California. That is the role, and that's the inherent function of the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. Unfortunately, this state's attorney splits her time between the state's attorney and also the public defender of Cook County based on her actions and what she's doing down in Springfield and supporting legislation that is completely nothing more than vilification of victims and also 99.9% of the good men and women who wear the badge.
We were just walking down Michigan Avenue last night talking to some horseback guys, and they're just scratching their heads like, we don't get any support. I mean, why? Police officers politically, 7 in 10 approve of police. And there are some bad ones. There's Derek Chauvin. He deserves to go to the penitentiary for a long time. You know what? 99.9% of them are good, hardworking people are just going, why are we the bad guys here? Can't we just do our job? Right. I think they want to do their job, but the environment led by Kim Foxx, it just makes my head spin. And that is a component of economic recovery. We can't have it be the Wild West here because
it's racial trust, and that doesn't happen overnight once it's broken. But it's made worse by bad things that happen and bad statements that people make. For the life of me, Pat, I mean, you work with politicians and imaging and putting out fires for years. Why would Mayor Lightfoot come forward and say she's only going to talk to black and brown reporters? She's smart enough to know that even though her intention, I think, was appropriate in the big picture, it came across horribly, and she hasn't done anything to change the perception of it.
Yeah, unforced error. I get what she was trying to say, and maybe it's a topic of discussion within the newsrooms as to why there isn't more diversity out on the street covering the news. Yeah, the way it came out, I don't think was great, but I think on the other side, there are people that think there needs to be a discussion about it. But I mean, she doesn't need that headache. There are other things to worry about that probably should be more her focus.
So I need to ask you both, and thank you, by the way, both for the extended time here, but I need to ask you both about the National Party, which feels completely different than the Illinois Republican Party. The image of the National Party in the wake of Trump continues to be that it's Trump's party. My sense of this is that people in the Republican Party and people who are moderates as well have no interest in following Donald Trump. They want to see the people who were responsible for January 6th brought to justice, and they want some sensibility brought back before the Republican Party so badly loses its way. It's a fringe. It's not even a part of the national conversation anymore.
Donald Trump needs to go away.
Yeah, and I mean, does that concern you that the National Party is still lining up that way?
It is. And, I will just say that I'm very proud of the fact that Rodney Davis and Adam Kinzinger voted for the commission to look into January 6th. And that is a start to finding out how deep the roots were. And from my perspective, the president was as culpable as anybody else in inciting that riot by perpetrating this ridiculous lie to many people that for some reason Mike Pence could reverse the election. I don't think any one of those 300 plus people who are currently sitting in the federal lockup awaiting trial believe that they were led in the right direction. And if they had the opportunity to do it over again, they would turn their back. And the former president, should be ashamed of himself for doing that to the American people, but also misleading so many other people who believed that there was a pathway to reverse the election.
So, Pat, does Donald Trump have the propensity for shame?
No, Donald Trump's a psychopath. I've been saying this I've been watching this guy for 25 years. He's always been a whack job. He's, to me, more disturbing than any of that. And I agree completely with Jim, is he's not a conservative. I mean, I'm a Republican because I believe in conservative government, and he's not in any way, shape, or form a conservative. But to the broader question, I do think daily his influence does wane. I know the media likes to make big issue about Donald Trump still controls the party, but the reality is, nobody that's out of office really truly controls the party. And we won't know the impact of Trump till we get through the next election cycle. But if Jim picks up 8 or 9 seats here in Illinois, running candidates that aren't necessarily Trumpies, I think that's another signal that the Trump influence is over. But we need to get back to being the conservative party, not this crazy tweet conspiracy theorist, let's attack the Capitol party, because you know what? Maybe 36% of the country likes that, but you need 51% if you want to be the majority. And that Trump will never get us there. We lost a huge majority in the House, we lost the Senate, and we lost the White House under Donald Trump's political guidance. So maybe it's time to just put Donald Trump aside.
And just lastly, could either one of you or both of you take on the topic of why voting in the primaries matters as well?
Well, yeah, it's extremely important because primaries, the way they have for the past decade, it's just been the far left and the far right are the ones that have been participating in that. And that's what you have for the general elections. In the general elections, you have to have candidates that can look, more to the middle. So we have candidates that I think go too far to the extremes, and that plays to the primary voter. We have to get the moderate Republican, the moderate Democrats, the independents engaged in this election in the primary. Otherwise, the choices will be very limited for the general election, and it won't reflect the values of the state.
Yeah, and that's why when you vote and you go, what, these two? This is who I get to choose from? Well, that's because you didn't show up for the primary votes, and that's why they're so important. Pat, last word from you.
No, I agree. I think 1, 2, 3, like maybe 5 or 6 elections ago, we had 13% turnout in the primary. That day it was real hot.
Right.
And then the choice you get on election day is a bad choice because, as Jim said, you get to the extremes on either end. And the reality is, whether you believe or support some of that on either end, those kind of people don't want to go to Springfield or Washington and get anything done. They want to go down there and raise money. I just finished reading John Boehner's book, the former Speaker of the House.
Yep.
Said that's the difference. They don't go down there to govern. Jim Jordan, that guy from Ohio, doesn't want to govern. He wants to raise money. And the reality is they're there to serve us, and they don't do a good job if they're fighting and getting nothing done.
Yeah, you're not there to keep the job. You're there to do the job. And they need to be reminded of that again and again. So whether or not a lightning rod like Donald Trump is in office, we all need to stay engaged. Leader Durkin, I appreciate your time on this. Please keep up the good hard work. We need solid Republican values as much as we need fair Democrat values. We need a good, solid two-party system where they're going to work together, because all this is asking for is a legitimate third party to come forward, and that may still happen, even though it appears impossible from the inside out. But I appreciate the work you're doing, and thank you for being here.
Steve, thank you very much, and Pat, thank you very much.
If you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance it when you're in, do what we all do. We call Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender. Who are the we in we all? It's everybody I've worked with. It's my family. It's people who ask me for advice, and I tell them Team Hochberg is not only legit, they're the best in the business. That's not a recommendation you can get wrong, by the way. If you tell somebody, hey, you know that mortgage you're doing, the biggest financial transaction of your life, here's somebody you ought to use. And then they turn out to be, a shyster? Oh, you don't want a shyster. Then you are going to be on their blacklist forever. I have no problem recommending Team Hochberg. I have and I will. And after hearing thousands of Team Hochberg ads, Jody called for a free consultation. She's happy she did. Team Hochberg helped Dan and Jody secure a cash-out refinance, pay off most of their credit cards, and save over $2,700 a month. That's a lot of money. So before calling, Dan and Jody were overwhelmed and stressed out. After, David Hochberg eliminated over $70,000 of debt and saved them over $30,000 a year. Team Hochberg helped me and thousands of my podcast listeners use their homes and their home's equity to eliminate debt. They helped Dan and Jody, but look, they can't help you if you don't call. And if you think, well, Steve, you didn't really talk about my issue. Anything involving the financing, the refinancing, the money in your home, well, you need to pick up the phone because Hochberg has an expert that can help, or he'll do it himself. All he wants to do is save you a little money, like Dan and Jody. Can't help you if you don't call. 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. 855-563-2843 or 56david.com for Homeside Financial, an equal housing lender, NMLS number 1124061. Back on Live from my office, this episode's charity worth considering for your donations, your time, your efforts, you're spreading the word of the same, is the Brennan Center for Justice. It's in honor of Justice William Brennan, Supreme Court legend. Look, here's the deal. The Brennan Center for Justice is a nonpartisan law and policy institute. Sounds boring, right? What they try to do is uphold the values of democracy. Remember, on January 6th, we almost lost this democracy. We stand for equal justice and the rule of law at the Brennan Center, and they work to craft and advance reforms going to make American democracy work and work better. Their mission, their impact, their programs, their history, their staff, their leadership, it's all there at BrennanCenter.org. And if you want to donate, it's easy to do it, and I hope you will, because in the process of talking to Mr. Brady and Mr. Durkin, talking about politics, I love politics, you know that if you know me, but in talking about it, none of it happens without a fair system of registering and voting, getting people to the polls, counting the votes, and announcing a winner, and not supporting the big lie by Donald Trump or anybody else for that matter. Again, it's BrennanCenter.org. Thanks to Ross Cochran for putting this together, as he always does, and does so well. And thank you for listening. Again, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you do, on Apple, on Spotify, at CochranShow.com, or at any podcast platform, because I don't think there's one that we've missed. And thank you for the support that continues to grow these numbers. I will ask you to do one thing for me, though, aside from the support you've already given, and that is download Live from My Office for a friend who is afraid of podcasts. You know what I'm talking about? People who go, podcast, yeah, I've heard of that. I don't know how to do it. Show them how easy it is to be someone who never misses an episode of Live from My Office. One more time, I thank you. And one more time, I tell you, we're going to do another Live from My Office. We do at least a couple, if not 3 of these. Sometimes specials make it 4 a week. And next time we get together, it's the men of a certain rage. Comedians John DeCoste, Mike Toomey from WGN-TV, Tim Benker, and me. We're going to get together and talk about being old. You know me, I started the podcast this way. I'm rooting for old people. And join us then. This is Live from My Office. Thanks for listening. Stay safe. Stay healthy. See you next time.
30 years plus on the airwaves. You have turned your dial to me. Now you're tuned into my podcast. It's Live from My Office, Steve. From Ithaca, New York to Carolina South, W. Cochran, Steve. From Minneapolis and then Chicago twice, top-rated shows achieved. Sit back, relax, and now listen to my show. When or wherever you are, 'cause you're on the go. A-list celebs with some laughs and great info. Live from my office, the Steve Cochran Podcast Show. Yeah. No better place to be. Yeah. Subscribe and like for free. Yeah. Live from my office, Steve. So glad you're with me. It's Live from my office, Steve.
Thank you for listening to Live from My Office, a service of Monkey Run Productions. All rights reserved. The podcast is hosted by Steve Cochran, and it's mixed, edited, and produced by me, Ross Cochran. Support the show by subscribing wherever you're listening and by telling your friends about it. Follow Steve on all social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And make sure you check out this episode's show notes for relevant information discussed during the conversations. You can also email the show directly at thecochronshow@gmail.com with any questions or comments. And that's the best place to tell us about your favorite nonprofit so we can make sure we mention them on the next episode. Steve is available for corporate speaking gigs. He would love to MC your event. And occasionally, he's funny. Thank you for listening. Head to CochranShow.com for more.